I first crossed paths with Chloe back in ninth grade, and it wasn't long before we were dating. By 10th grade, we were pretty much known as a solid couple. We sailed through high school without a hitch, and like a classic cliche, we shared our first intimate experience on prom night. After that, we embraced every chance to be close. We'd been talking about marriage since the 11th grade, deciding to wait until we finished college before making it official. But college changed Chloe. In high school, everyone respected our relationship, and no one bothered her. Once we hit college, though, things took a turn. While a few familiar faces from high school were around, most people were new, and they didn't see Chloe as my girlfriend anymore. Instead, she became a desirable woman who caught a lot of attention. I noticed the change but felt helpless. We had different majors and classes, so we only saw each other after classes and after I wrapped up my work. The attention from other guys seemed to affect her, and she got more flirtatious. I often saw her laughing and chatting with other guys, but since I was across the quad, she didn't notice me. On 2 occasions I saw her in the cafeteria with one guy, and once there were 2. I didn't realize until much later that I never saw her with other girls, always with guys. Still, it didn't bother me too much. I mean, we were in love and planning to get married, so I figured there was nothing to worry about. Chloe was attractive, so naturally guys paid attention to her, but she was mine, and she showed that every night when we were together, year after year. After we graduated, found jobs in our fields, got married, and began our life together, I enjoyed almost 6 years of happiness before everything came crashing down. One day, as I sat at my desk, Molly from the mailroom dropped some files in my basket. As I looked at the top one, I wondered why it had landed on my desk since it was meant for Leo Green, an old classmate from high school and college. Halfway through, I noticed a major error. The projections were off by nearly $3 million. Just as I grabbed my calculator, Leo rushed into my office needing the file for an important presentation to Apex. I showed him the error, and he looked really worried about the mistake, knowing it had to be fixed fast to prevent any fallout. He took the file and left quickly to make the corrections. It was a Thursday, and Chloe always worked late to finish the payroll for Friday. My routine was to hit Bud's bar after work for a half-pound burger and a couple of beers before heading home. I was finishing up my burger and starting my second beer when Leo came in. He saw me, came over, and joined me in the booth. He ordered a beer from Beth and asked her to bring me the Tom, saying it was a thank you for helping him save his job earlier. I didn't argue. After all, it wasn't much. We chatted about work, gossiping about who we'd seen or heard about. Then Leo brought up something sensitive. He told me he thought I was a nice guy and wondered why I put up with Chloe's behavior. I was baffled and told him I didn't know what he was talking about. He pressed on, asking why I let her act like she did. I was confused, and Leo realized I didn't know something crucial. When he tried to leave, I stopped him and insisted he explain. I needed to know what he meant after dropping such a bombshell. Leo reluctantly stayed and began explaining, shocked that I was in the dark for the last decade. He told me Chloe had a reputation, and I was too stunned to speak. Leo apologized, regretting bringing it up, but I urged him to continue. He confessed he'd known about Chloe's behavior since high school and had even been involved with her. I was shocked, insisting he tell me everything from the beginning. The story he told was not just shocking. It was a wake-up call that this had been happening right under my nose for over 10 years. 2 weeks after senior prom, Leo had walked into his cousin Mac's house and found Max and Chloe together. They saw him, and since neither objected, he joined in and waited for his turn. They continued until Chloe left to clean up and meet me after my shift at Jessup Samet. Leo and Max kept their encounters going whenever I was working. After Max got serious with Ella Johnson, Chloe started seeing Leo again. Then, Leo found her with Ryan Carter and Ethan Bennett and joined in with them too. They kept it up until she had to leave to meet me. Leo revealed that she had shared herself with many others, even participating in group encounters with more than half a dozen guys. I knew we were friends, but not exactly close pals, you know? Think back to when we were 18, with hormones all over the place. You and Chloe seemed somewhat steady, but I didn't believe your relationship was that serious. I mean, if it were, would she be messing around with anyone who showed interest? That pattern continued in college. During her first semester as a freshman, Chloe's classes were Monday through Thursday and Tuesday through Friday, with Wednesdays off. Her last class on weekdays ended by 2 or 1. I can't recall your schedule, but I know you went to work after class. As soon as Chloe finished her classes, she headed to a bedroom somewhere. Wednesdays turned into an all-day thing throughout school. While class schedules varied, the constant was Chloe hooking up after class until you finished work. It might sound like it happened every day, but it was more like 2 or 3 times a week. A lot of us were surprised when you and Chloe got married. We figured you must have known what she had been up to and went through with it anyway. Some even thought you might be okay with your woman being with other men. Tyler speculated that maybe you and Chloe were into that sort of thing, but nobody ever saw you with another girl. Meanwhile, Chloe was often spotted with different guys. I had no clue, Leo, not even a hint. Damn, Rob. I hate to be the one to tell you, but if you never knew, then you probably don't know about her Thursday night meetups with Jack and Tom Miller. And on the Tuesdays you go bowling, she sees Sam Harris. I don't know who else she sees or when, but you can bet that whenever you're busy, so is Chloe. It might not mean much, but I stopped being involved with her once you two got married. It's one thing with a single woman, but messing around with a married one is another. I don't know what to say, Leo, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm definitely going to take some action. I finished my beer, got up to leave, and turned to Leo. Thanks, Leo. Thanks for the burger, the beer, and for opening my eyes as I drove home. As I thought over what Leo said, I questioned if I should believe him. Part of me thought, no way. Chloe loves me, and she wouldn't betray me. But on the other hand, why would Leo lie? I had to face the fact that he wouldn't. He knew I'd check on what he told me. If he had lied, how could we keep working together? We couldn't, and Leo understood that. Working with him, knowing about him and Chloe, would be tough, but we'd get through it. I remembered being a teenager with raging hormones. If some other guy's girl had offered back then, and I wasn't with Chloe, I might have gone for it. The real question now was, what do I do, Rob? I didn't know if Chloe and I were finished. Maybe I could have forgiven a one-night drunken mistake, or even a short affair if Chloe could promise it wouldn't happen again. But 10 years of betrayal? No way. I lay in bed pretending to sleep as Chloe came back from doing payroll. I ignored her touch when she reached out because I didn't want any leftovers, though I'd unknowingly accepted them for years. Her hand on me made my skin crawl, and for the first time, I didn't feel a thing when Chloe touched me. The next morning I was up before Chloe, with coffee brewing and the morning paper in hand. Chloe asked what happened the previous night since she came home eager and found me already in bed. Leo resamed that my behavior was unusual. I told her I felt sick because something I ate didn't sit right, so I went to bed early. Chloe hoped I'd feel better and mentioned I'd have to make up for lost time tonight. When I got to work, I immediately called Oscar Reed, an old high school buddy who now practiced corporate law, though I wasn't sure what that meant. I asked him to recommend a tough divorce lawyer. He was surprised, realizing my hopeful assumption was wrong. Discovering I wanted a divorce lawyer meant I'd learned the truth about Chloe. He asked if I believed we had an open marriage, thinking that was the only way Chloe could act like this and still be with me. Shockingly, Oscar, I only found out about her actions yesterday. After a pause, Oscar suggested I contact Tom Blake and mention his referral. I followed Oscar's advice and called Blake, telling him about Oscar's recommendation. He said he could meet later if I could be there by 1. I agreed, and sure enough, I did. Blake told me I had options, from a friendly separation to an all-out war like Attila the Hun. In our state, not a no-fault state, infidelity was grounds for divorce. But to get a divorce based on infidelity, I needed solid evidence. Hearsay wouldn't cut it. I asked Blake how I could gather the evidence needed, and he handed me a business card. It belonged to Vincent Price, a private investigator with an office conveniently located right across the street. Blake offered to call Price to see if he could fit me in immediately. I told him to go ahead, eager to resolve this quickly. I also instructed him to begin the divorce paperwork, assuring him I'd provide the evidence as soon as I had it. Blake made the call, and within 10 minutes, Vincent Price had a plan in place for us. Unfortunately, one of the key requirements was for me to act completely normal around Chloe, ensuring she suspected nothing about the impending divorce. As uncomfortable as it sounded, Price advised sticking to my usual routine without any changes. If intimacy was part of our weekly routine, I had to keep it that way. It wasn't about love anymore. It was just fulfilling a basic need. Don't alter anything that might tip her off. Keeping her unaware was crucial. Back at the office, I gathered my resolve and called Chloe. We had a tradition of going out for dinner every Friday night and grabbing breakfast every Sunday morning. So when I reached her on the phone, I suggested trying tricot cheese for dinner, and she was on board. As I enjoyed my veal, Marcella Clow worked through her rigatoni with white wine. Meanwhile, Price's team was discreetly installing wireless cameras and listening devices in our home. Sipping my Merlot, I recalled Price's advice: resist the temptation to search for hidden cameras. If Chloe caught me, it would ruin everything. I also had to act normal in the bedroom, which isn't easy unless you're naturally uninhibited. The system would record whenever there was sound or motion, so I'd be on camera, knowing some employees might see me. I couldn't let that hold me back. Though there was a switch to turn off the system, most people forget to turn it back on when they leave. His advice was to leave it alone and act naturally, like a confident star at work. After dinner, while making a home video, I suggested drinks and maybe some dancing to Chloe. She turned it down, saying she wanted to go home so I could make up for disappointing her the night before. On the drive back, she slid over, unzipped my pants, and teasingly said, "Drive carefully, Blake Hart. You wouldn't want to hit a bump that makes me bite off more than I should." In my mind, I knew she'd probably done this with countless other men over the years, but my body responded instinctively, betraying my disgust. Once we pulled into the driveway, Chloe hurried me inside to the bedroom. I couldn't follow Price's advice to act natural. There was no way I could pretend everything was fine, knowing I might be under surveillance. Trying to fake normalcy while being intimate with Chloe was difficult, so I went to the switch and turned the system off. I left my phone on the car seat to remind me to turn it back on when I left the house. I'm not sure if Chloe noticed, but that night, it wasn't about making love. It was just going through the motions. Unfortunately, she wasn't satisfied with once, and I had to perform 2 more times before she let me rest. The next morning, ready for my run, Chloe reminded me she wouldn't be home when I got back because of a long hair appointment from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. She mentioned chatting with other regulars and usually having lunch with them. It might have been true, but after what I'd discovered, I suspected she was meeting one of her lovers, either before or after getting her hair done. On my way out, I made sure to switch the system back on. I doubted anything would happen during my run, but I needed to get into the habit of ensuring the system was active when I wasn't home. The switch only deactivated the cameras, leaving the listening devices and phone tap running. After my usual 5-mile run, I returned home, went down to the basement, and opened the cabinet above my workbench. It's where I had Price place the recording equipment. Inside were 2 receivers, one for the listening devices and phone tap, the other a DVD recorder capturing footage from the wireless cameras. Confirming my worst fears, I heard a recorded conversation. "Hello? Good morning, lover. Are we still on for today?" "Absolutely. The wife took the kids to the zoo, so we have until 6 tonight. You know I can't stay that long. I need to be home by 2. Any later and Rob might start asking questions. He's already noticed I don't get home until late. Then skip the hair appointment and get over here so we can have more time." "Yeah, but what do I tell Rob when he asks why I've been gone so long without getting my hair done? I want more time with you, but we have to settle for what we can get." The man's voice was unmistakable. It was my cousin Jake. I was seething with anger as I headed back upstairs, wondering how many of my relatives she might have been involved with. By the time Chloe returned from her hair appointment, I had managed to regain my composure. An hour later, I faked a fall down the basement stairs, telling Chloe it hurt my back. Said it must have been a pulled muscle or something. This conveniently gave me a break from having to be intimate with her for the next few days. On Monday, I called Chloe at work and informed her that I'd be out of town starting Tuesday and would be back by Friday to take her out to dinner. There was no actual trip, but I didn't consider the 3 days wasted. I traveled for work about once a month, and Chloe was always at home during my nightly checks and calls. Since I called at unpredictable times, anywhere from 7 to 10 p.m., I doubted she'd wait for my calls before stepping out. If she was indeed cheating, as I'd been led to believe, she might be doing it on our bed while I talked to her. That was my hope. If she was, and the cameras captured it, I'd have the solid proof my lawyer needed for the divorce. That night, Chloe wanted closeness, saying, "I need something to hold me over for the 3 nights you'll be gone." Yeah, right. Luckily, my back was still acting up, so I had to refuse. On Tuesday morning, Chloe kissed me goodbye as I left for my supposed business trip, suitcase in hand. I worked almost a full day before leaving around 3. I drove back to our neighborhood, parked a block away from the house, and using my laptop, entered a code Price had given me to access the software he'd installed. With a few keystrokes, I was listening to the phone line recorder. Hello? Hey, handsome hunk, it's me, what's up? Hubby just left on a 3-day trip. Ready for 3 fun-filled nights? Does a duck walk barefoot on the beach? I'll take that as a yes. You call Alex. I've got to head out to work. I'll be home by 6. See you then. After shutting down the computer, I called Tom Blake and told him to have the papers ready for service by Thursday, specifying how I wanted it done. He mentioned my method would cost more than the usual fee, but I didn't care. I left the neighborhood and checked into a motel across town with a restaurant and bar next door, settling in for a 3-day stay. I liked the bar. It was my kind of place, bringing a smile to my face every time I visited. It was a country western joint with a jukebox full of good dancing tunes. Every night, I saw a few single ladies who couldn't stand seeing a man sitting alone when there was music to dance to. On my first visit, as I was sipping a long neck at the bar, a striking redhead approached me and said, "Come on, sugar, they're playing our song." She took my hand, led me off the bar stool and onto the dance floor. As we danced, she clarified, "Don't get the wrong idea, sugar. I'm not keeping score. I just love to dance, and you were there." Her name was Amber. After the dance, she invited me to join her and her friends, Grace and Olivia, at their table. I spent the evening taking turns dancing with them until about 10:30, then told them I had to call it a night. "Maybe we'll see you again," Amber said. "We're here 2 or 3 nights a week." I replied, "I'm just next door at the motel, so I'll probably be around the next 2 nights." I went to bed feeling positive for the first time since that conversation with Leo. The following afternoon at 3, I parked a block away from the house and reviewed the footage captured by the cameras the previous night. The 2 men who joined Chloe in the bedroom were noticeably younger, at least 6 years her junior, making me wonder if she was seeking youthful excitement. The content was straightforward, just typical bedroom activities. Although watching Chloe with 2 men didn't really interest me, I was more curious about the audio. I was surprised by what I heard, or rather, what I didn't hear. I had expected her to make disparaging comments about my skills, but she didn't. Wednesday passed without much happening, except one of the men expressed a desire to meet more often. Chloe made it clear that I took priority in her schedule. However, I overheard her telling them to leave by 6 in the morning on both Wednesday and Thursday. She stressed the importance of avoiding detection by the neighbors, who weren't early risers. They left promptly at 6, and I figured it would be the same on Friday. I called my attorney and instructed him to change the service of the papers to Friday at 5:45. Friday morning, I parked just down the street from the house at 5:55. When the front door opened, the 2 men came out. They turned to say goodbye to Chloe, who stood just inside the door. That's when they saw the man standing off to the side. He stepped forward, handed Chloe the papers, and then walked away, leaving Chloe and her 2 companions staring after him. I pulled up in front of the house, honked the horn to get Chloe's attention, waved goodbye, and drove off. The papers Chloe received included a letter from me. It basically said I never wanted to speak to her again unless it was in the presence of our lawyers. I didn't want to know why. I didn't want to hear any of Chloe's excuses. I wasn't interested in her saying she loved only me and that her affairs were meaningless. I didn't want to hear that it wasn't what I thought or that we could overcome it because of our love. I had no patience for the typical excuses cheaters give when caught. Naturally, Chloe ignored the letter, and just 15 minutes after I left the house, my phone started ringing. It was Chloe. I let it go to voicemail, along with the next 7 calls from her. When I got to work, I told my secretary, Nora, that I had left Chloe and not to put through any calls from her. As I opened my office door, another thought occurred to me, and I turned back to Nora. "Oh, and Nora, if she shows up here, please tell her I'm not here. Say I've gone to meet with a customer." 5 minutes later, Nora stuck her head in the door and said she'd talked to Emily at the front desk. If Chloe showed up, Emily would call me and stall her to give me time to slip out the side door. I could go to the cafe for coffee until Chloe left. I thanked Nora, realizing once again how invaluable a good secretary can be. Chloe called me 17 times that day, and I ignored every call. At lunchtime, I called my dad and brother to update them on the situation. I asked Dad to let Mom know, but also to ask her not to try and persuade me to patch things up with Chloe. He warned me it would be tough since Mom saw Chloe as the daughter she never had. By the end of the day, I still had work to finish. With no hurry to go home, I decided to stay and wrap it up by 5. Before leaving, Nora informed me, "By the way, your wife called 5 times before noon, and each time I told her I couldn't put her through to you. I think she finally got the message because she hasn't called since." I finished around 7 p.m., and when I reached the lobby, Emily was gone. But Frank, our night watchman, was there. "Hot time on the town tonight with the missus?" he asked. "Why would you think that? She's out there waiting on you." I explained, "We're getting a divorce, Frank. She wants to talk, and I don't. Don't open the door if she knocks, and if she uses the intercom, tell her you're alone in the building." I added that my car was in the lot because of a breakdown, and that a tow truck would pick it up in the morning. Frank assured me he could handle it, expressing sympathy and mentioning he'd been through 2 divorces himself. I exited through the back door, circled the block, crossed the street, and headed down the alley to Dave's diner. I took a seat where I could watch Chloe waiting by my car, ordered the special, and kept an eye on her while I ate. Halfway through dessert, she approached the building and pressed the intercom. Apparently, Frank delivered my message because she returned to her car and drove away. After finishing dessert and having one more cup of coffee, I left. I stopped briefly at the bar for a couple of beers. Despite a few single ladies hoping for a dance partner, I stuck to my beers and left. Saturday morning was busy as I tackled tasks I should have done before serving Chloe the papers. I hoped I wasn't too late and that she hadn't taken action on what I should have done. I went to the bank, emptied all the accounts, and retrieved my personal papers and certificates of deposit from the safe deposit box, leaving Chloe's belongings untouched. I removed my wedding ring, placing it in the box for her to find later. Afterward, I had breakfast at the Waffle House and used my cell phone to handle the credit cards. I canceled both joint cards, leaving me with a Visa and an American Express in my name only. Chloe had 2 cards solely in her name, so I ensured she couldn't rack up charges on the joint cards with cash advances. After breakfast, I returned to the motel, parked my car, and called a cab to take me to the nearest Avis rental place. Renting the cheapest car available, I headed back to the motel. I spent the afternoon lounging by the pool and reading a book. Just before dinner, I switched on my cell phone and found 9 messages from Chloe. I deleted them all and turned the phone off again. For dinner, I had a light meal and then headed to the bar, which had a live band playing on Friday and Saturday nights, drawing a big crowd. Finding a seat at the bar, I ordered a beer. As I drank, I felt a tug on my shirt and turned to see Amber. "Hey, cowboy, why are you sitting here when there's a seat at our table for you?" To be honest, if I'd seen you, I wouldn't have intruded. Didn't want to assume I was welcome. "Nonsense. Come on." I got up and followed her to their table, where Grace and Olivia were also present. I greeted the girls and said, "There seems to be something wrong with this picture. 3 beautiful women sitting alone and not surrounded by guys." "We get a lot of attention, but it's usually from idiots," Amber explained. "They see us here, notice the wedding rings, and assume we're looking to cheat. We're just here to dance, and only a few guys get that. Most think they're God's gift to women, and we have to fend them off. After the other night, we know you're one of the good guys, and you have an open invitation to join us whenever you're here." "But I have to ask," I said, "why are 3 gorgeous married women spending time in a place like this without your husbands?" "It's a fair question," Amber replied. "Grace's husband is in the Army Reserve, and his unit got deployed to Afghanistan. She was losing her mind being stuck at home alone, so we decided to get her out. Olivia's husband works the afternoon shift, and my hubby is a long-haul trucker who's away a lot, so the 3 of us banded together to keep each other company. We love to dance, and here we are. What about you? I noticed you had a ring on last time, and now it's gone." "I handed my wife divorce papers yesterday morning and left the ring where she'd find it." "Does that mean you're free to pursue?" "Not at all. The grounds were infidelity, and I won't give her anything she could use against me in a countersuit," I replied. "Great," Grace added. "We have a reliable dancing partner." I spent the rest of the evening dancing with them until closing, occasionally sharing the floor with other guys. We agreed to meet again on Sunday. I spent a quiet day by the pool with a book, and on Monday I drove the rental car to work, hoping Chloe would assume I was out of town and keep her distance. Throughout the week, Chloe called 6 to 10 times daily, which I never answered more than once. She used unfamiliar numbers, but I hung up as soon as I heard her voice. Each night after dinner, I stopped by the bar for a beer or two. Amber, Grace, and Olivia were there on Wednesday and Friday, so I joined them, dancing until 10 on Wednesday and until closing on Friday. By Saturday, I figured Chloe would realize I wasn't going to talk to her, so I returned the rental and drove my car to work on Monday. Mistake. Monday. As I left the building, I found her parked next to my car. Seeing me, she got out and stood by my driver's side door, insisting we talk. I didn't respond. As I approached, she blocked the door, demanding that I let her explain. I gently pushed her aside, causing her to stumble but regain her balance quickly. I rolled down the window and told her she needed to read the letter with the divorce papers. I stated clearly that I wouldn't engage in any conversation without my lawyer present, and that any discussion would only concern the divorce. Chloe insisted she didn't want a divorce and didn't want to lose me. I reiterated that our relationship was over and that she needed to accept it because I wasn't changing my mind. After rolling up the window, I drove away, leaving her standing there. Her refusal to accept my decision was clear when I left work on Tuesday. 2 men approached my car and grabbed my arms. I recognized them as the guys who'd been with Chloe in our bedroom. One warned me not to resist, saying Chloe wanted to talk, and since I was being difficult, they would take me to her by force if necessary. They must have thought I was an easy target given my suit and briefcase, but I figured I could handle them. They wouldn't expect an old guy to put up a fight, so I could catch them off guard. Either way, the commotion would draw attention and foil their plan. But then I thought, do I really want this? If Chloe was willing to go this far to reach me, what might she do next? If I sent these 2 back to her battered and bruised? They nudged me into my car, and I sat between them, briefcase on my lap, as they drove to the house. Once there, they escorted me inside, and Chloe instructed them to seat me in a chair and keep me there. She turned to me and announced, "We're not getting a divorce." As I tried to rise, the 2 men shoved me back down and restrained me. One of them warned me to stay put. Chloe declared that we'd remain married, but that there would be changes due to her medical issue, which I'd discovered. She expressed regret that I'd found out, but insisted I had to accept it now. She then confessed her love for me, claiming she wouldn't let me go. Her medical issue, she revealed, was nymphomania, which she'd struggled with since high school. Chloe blamed its onset on when I took her purity. I dismissed her explanation, suggesting there were medications for that condition. She acknowledged their existence but explained she'd tried them all. They made her feel sluggish and dull like a zombie. Despite this, she admitted to enjoying her condition, emphasizing her love for intimacy and asserting that she hardly ever left me alone. She argued that her actions hadn't hurt me and that she'd been generous with me. Chloe reasoned that since I couldn't satisfy her constant needs, she had to look elsewhere, but she always came back to me because she loved me. She outlined her terms, saying she drafted a postnuptial agreement allowing her as many lovers as needed for her mental well-being. She proposed that I agree to leave the marriage with nothing if I later found the conditions unacceptable. I asked what she thought I'd gain besides a promiscuous wife. She replied that I'd continue having the same loving wife I'd had for the past 6 years. I reminded Chloe that she had always described our years together as perfect, even though she now seemed to think my actions were a problem. I pointed out that the only thing that had changed was my involvement, now that someone else was part of what I had once considered exclusively mine. I urged her to accept that our life could continue just as it had for the past 6 years. Chloe insisted that my inability to meet her physical needs didn't mean I wasn't enough for her. She praised me as a great lover who always left her satisfied, but admitted I couldn't fulfill her needs as frequently as she desired. I called her by her full name, knowing it irked her, and reluctantly agreed to consider signing the agreement with some amendments. I expressed my concerns about our lack of intimacy and my need for her companionship. Despite my assurances of love, she remained firm. With a heavy heart, I accepted her offer to make the necessary changes, hoping it might salvage our crumbling relationship. As I tried to get up from my chair, the 2 men with her blocked my path, making me feel trapped. When I mentioned needing to use the bathroom, one of them mockingly suggested I relieve myself where I sat, saying Chloe wanted me to stay put. Chloe returned after a few minutes, read the document aloud, and asked me to sign. She handed me a pen, but I noted her associates wouldn't let me stand, so I told them to back off. Rising, I approached her, placed my briefcase on the table, and took the pen. But I decided to read the document myself to ensure it matched her description. After going through it, I laughed, tore it up, and tossed it at her. I grabbed my briefcase and headed for the door. Chloe shouted for me to stop, and her 2 associates chased after me. As they closed in, I swung my briefcase at the first guy's head, knocking him down. The second guy was caught off guard, and I landed a punch on his mouth, making him stagger. I then kicked him hard in the groin, causing him to collapse. Realizing I needed to keep them incapacitated in this 2-on-1 situation, I continued striking them, alternating between kicks and punches until Chloe screamed for me to stop or she'd shoot. I turned to see her pointing a gun at me. I dared her to pull the trigger. I took out my cell phone, dialed 911, and calmly told the operator my name and address, explaining my wife was threatening me with a gun. The operator advised me to stay calm and not provoke her, assuring me help was on the way. After hanging up, I sarcastically thanked Chloe, saying her arrest would speed up our divorce. She scoffed at my words, warning that when the police arrived, I'd be the one in handcuffs. She accused me of barging in and attacking her friends out of jealousy, claiming it would be my word against theirs, since they were fully dressed. I mocked her logic, asking how that aligned with her supposed love for me. She confidently told me not to worry. I countered by saying that I'd post bail and that Derek and Alex wouldn't press charges. I reminded Chloe that Frank and Diana had seen the 2 men pick me up from work and escort me inside. I accused her of having me brought there against my will and stopping me from leaving, despite her companion's failure. Then, she had pulled a gun on me. I explained that even if I spent a night in jail, once my witnesses testified, she'd be the one behind bars, and I wouldn't be paying her bail. I advised her that given the situation, kidnapping, false imprisonment, threats with a weapon, and probably more, her best option was to keep quiet. Ignoring my advice, Chloe and her associates fabricated stories, leading to my arrest. The next morning, I called Tom Blake, briefed him on what happened, and asked him to work with Vincent Price to get the evidence and take appropriate steps. Chloe realized she couldn't bail me out until I saw a judge, which wouldn't happen until Monday. Tom had a friend who was an assistant district attorney. He showed him the tapes of what happened at the house, which clearly depicted Derek and Alex holding me down while Chloe aimed a gun at me. The ADA heard Chloe admitting she planned to lie and have her 2 accomplices do the same. When Chloe appeared at the courthouse for my bail hearing on Monday morning, she was arrested. Warrants were issued for Derek and Alex, and they were in custody by nightfall. I refused to post bail for Chloe, and her parents couldn't come up with the money either. Chloe got a lawyer who contacted me, suggesting a bail bondsman wanted me to use the house as collateral for her bond. I dismissed the idea and hung up. I checked out of the motel, moved back home, and changed all the locks, given Chloe's threat with a weapon. Tom secured a restraining order against Chloe, ensuring that if she somehow got out of jail, she couldn't come within 1,000 feet of me without being arrested and sent back to jail. Reconciliation with Chloe was tempting, but not worth the risk of serious jail time. Both Derek and Alex turned on Chloe and accepted plea deals. Chloe claimed she never intended to shoot me, only trying to stop me from hurting Derek or Alex so badly I'd end up in jail. The jury watched the tape and, based on Chloe's claims of love, believed she was likely trying to prevent me from injuring Derek or Alex. They acquitted her of the felony menacing charge but found her guilty of unlawful restraint and filing a false police report, along with some minor charges. The judge sentenced her to 9 months in county jail and 1,000 hours of community service after release. While she was incarcerated, the divorce proceedings concluded smoothly. Besides losing Chloe, I only gave up 20% of the house's equity. I transferred the money to her bank account and headed to the bar next to the motel where I'd been staying. Fortune smiled on me. Amber and Olivia were there, so I invited them to join me in celebrating my newfound freedom. Grace wasn't there because her husband had returned from deployment and they were busy catching up.